hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
President Trump posted, "Great news for America. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done." But we're in a moment right now, you want to talk about the FCC. We're not handled by them. We don't have a license from them. Broadcast stations do. And what's appropriate, what isn't. I'm all for more free speech, more speech, but it comes with responsibility. And we used to have that in this country, and it seems to have gone away. Your thought?
Again, social consequences for bad speech, that is a normal part of American life. I think the question over the past 20 years is whether it's been too broadly applied to mainstream views like Charlie's views. Charlie would say a man is not a woman, and then you'd have social consequences for saying something perfectly normal. And you say something off the wall, no social consequences. Well, social consequences or market consequences for saying stupid stuff on your late night TV show on ABC, those are market consequences, social consequences. Now, the question of government involvement, again, raises some other issues, I think, and muddies the waters.
Welcome back. Tonight, we're looking at the explosive fallout surrounding Jimmy Kimmel's comments after Charlie Kirk's assassination, Ben Shapiro's fiery response, and Democrats' push to label the shooter as a Republican. This is one of the most heated debates in recent memory, and we're breaking it all down. Make sure you hit that subscribe button right now so you don't miss future updates.
Senior national correspondent William Lajeunesse. William.
Well, here's two things here. What Kimmel said, and secondly, why stations want him off the air. But then there's another layer. There's a $6 billion sale of some TV stations that some feel ABC caved to government pressure to get the deal done. But let's start with Kimmel. Seen here after ABC suspended his show for comments about Kirk's killer and this joke about President Trump.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
Well, many found that offensive. Also, Tyler Robinson's mother says he's politically left, pro-gay and pro-trans rights. Kimmel is wrong.
We should not be going after people for this. Look, did he get some things wrong? Yeah. I mean, but he is not a commentator, a news anchor. This is somebody who's a comedian.
Well, many feel he is a social commentator, but Kimmel can say what he wants, but ABC can also hold him responsible for it. And here's the backstory, Harris. The red dots you see are ABC-owned affiliates by Sinclair Broadcasting. The yellow dots represent some of the 32 ABC stations owned by Nexstar, which is trying to buy 64 more stations in a $6 billion deal that must be approved by the FCC. So many feel that Kimmel is being pulled off the air until ABC can get that deal done, or at least on Nexstar's behalf, help them get this deal done. They suspended Kimmel only until that deal goes through, and he makes an apology, then comes back on the air.
The ratings. In focus now, Ben Shapiro, podcast host. Great to see you today. First of all, you're in the media. You're seeing this blow up, as we all did, in social media over the last 24 hours, especially last night. Your first reaction?
My first reaction is I'm sort of surprised that it took 10 years for the public to sound off on how much Jimmy Kimmel sucks. I mean, the reality is that he's been awful at his job for full on a decade. His ratings have been terrible. He has become not a comedian, but as Guy Benson over there has said, the woke pope of late night comedy. And so affiliates looking at Jimmy Kimmel at this point and saying, you know what, we don't wish to be associated with Jimmy Kimmel's program. That is perfectly well within the ambit of what affiliates very often do when they don't like the programming or they don't like the things that particular hosts are saying. Sinclair has made very clear their feelings about Jimmy Kimmel. They say they're going to replace his show on the air this Friday with an hour-long tribute to all of our friend Charlie Kirk, which I think is exactly the right move. I would not be shocked at all if that tribute received significantly higher ratings than Jimmy Kimmel's show did in that slot.
Well, back in 2017, there was somebody who already felt like Jimmy Kimmel didn't have great humor. In fact, he tweeted about it. Charlie Kirk. Look at this. Charlie Kirk said then, October 5th, 2017, Jimmy Kimmel isn't funny. Ben.
Well, I mean, Charlie was right about a lot of things. That is just another thing that Charlie was right about. And again, I think that the question as to whether Kimmel is losing his position, whether he ever comes back due to public pressure or whether it's due to the Trump administration is an interesting question. But there's no question that the general public was not buying what Jimmy Kimmel was selling, and that was evident from the ratings. And if affiliates, again, say, you know what, we don't wish to put this on our stations, well, nobody has a right to a late night show on ABC or its affiliates.
Well, Kimmel was far from the only person in the legacy media pushing the false narrative that the suspect was MAGA and motivated by far-right ideology. Watch this.
The shooter was right-wing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not really hard to figure out. In fact, he was very, very right-wing.
He had at least some association or affinity or fascination or interest in this Groyper group, which would lead you to believe that he's actually not a leftist.
There was an incredible amount of angry discourse from the right, blaming the Democrats, blaming liberals, saying, you're the reason this happened, only to find out, surprise, 22-year-old white dude, love guns, didn't check it in them boxes y'all thought he would check, did he?
I mean, at least they are showing us who they are.
It was very clear early on exactly what was going on here. I mean, the early accounts from media outlets, including places like The Guardian and Tablet Magazine, were reporting that friends and family of the shooter said that he had turned very hard to the left. We knew very early on what was etched on those bullets, which included not only gamer language, but a language that was associated with apparently trans issues. And of course, it was pretty clear very early on, as early as Saturday, actually, that this person was a gay man who was in a relationship with another man who believed he was a woman, and they were both into a phenomenon that can only be described as furriness. And so the idea that this was in any way a right-wing shooter was debunked extraordinarily early on, and yet that line continued to be retailed. Now we see a sort of backup line, which is, well, actually, it was just a personal psychological issue. It had to do with his relationships. We've seen the line that actually was apolitical, that had nothing to do with politics at all. All of that is absolute sheer nonsense. He says in those text messages with his gay lover that Charlie Kirk was hateful, and the reason he thought Charlie Kirk was hateful is because of Charlie's views specifically on the gay and trans issues.
And, you know, I'm thinking about some of the comments from Montel Williams and others who have, you know, talked about the fact that it was just his broken heart, basically. It was some sort of a love situation, and he was brokenhearted. Look, I do want to talk about this just big picture for a second, because I have said this before. I think more speech is always better, not into killing speech. But we're in a moment right now, you know, you want to talk about the FCC. We're not handled by them. We don't have a license from them. Broadcast stations do. And what's appropriate, what isn't. I'm all for more free speech, more speech, but it comes with responsibility. And we used to have that in this country, and it seems to have gone away. Your thought?
Again, social consequences for bad speech, that is a normal part of American life. I think the question over the past 20 years is whether it's been too broadly applied to mainstream views like Charlie's views. You know, Charlie would say a man is not a woman, and then you'd have social consequences for saying something perfectly normal. And you say something off the wall, no social consequences. Well, social consequences or market consequences for saying stupid stuff on your late night TV show on ABC, those are market consequences, social consequences. Now, the question of government involvement, again, raises some other issues, I think, and muddies the waters.
Ben Shapiro, always great to have you in focus. Thank you very much.
Jimmy Kimmel sparked outrage with his remarks about Charlie Kirk's killer, mocking the tragedy and making light of the situation. Instead of compassion, he delivered a monologue many felt was tasteless and politically motivated. The backlash was immediate. ABC suspended his show, and now reports suggest the timing could be tied to a $6 billion station deal pending FCC approval. Democrats and major media outlets rushed to frame the shooter as right-wing, MAGA-aligned, and motivated by conservative ideology. They pointed fingers, saying the right bore responsibility for fueling violence. But evidence later showed the shooter leaned left, supported LGBTQ+ causes, and was driven more by personal issues than political ones. Despite this, the left doubled down, refusing to correct the record, leaving millions of Americans misinformed. Ben Shapiro didn't hold back. He blasted Jimmy Kimmel as the woke pope of late-night comedy and argued his show has been terrible for years. Affiliates, he noted, want nothing to do with him, and some even replaced Kimmel's slot with tributes to Charlie Kirk. Shapiro said those tributes could easily outperform Kimmel's ratings, proving just how little confidence the public has in Kimmel's brand of comedy. He also reminded viewers that free speech comes with consequences. Kimmel can say what he wants, but ABC has the right to pull him if he crosses the line. The contrast is sharp. Democrats insisted the shooter was a right-wing extremist, while evidence said otherwise. Jimmy Kimmel mocked a national tragedy, and instead of uniting Americans, he divided them further. Meanwhile, Ben Shapiro and others exposed the hypocrisy of the media and Hollywood. where accountability only seems to apply to conservatives. The assassination of Charlie Kirk is already one of the most painful moments in recent history, but the reaction afterward has been just as revealing. From Jimmy Kimmel's reckless comments to Democrats' false framing and Ben Shapiro's blistering critique, the battle over truth and narrative is on full display. If you agree that America deserves honesty, not spin, hit that subscribe button on Capital Insights like this video, and let me know in the comments, do you think Kimmel should ever be allowed back on air?